Hey, everybody, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome back to Finance 470. Let me know if, well, let me ask you, do most of you plan on coming, are you going to be able to come back to school next Monday?
Yes.
Okay. Is anybody not going to be able to come back on Monday? Speak up if not. Okay. All right. So hopefully all of you will be back next Monday. So I'm going to share my screen today. And I know that Zoom is not the best situation, but I'll share my screen and then I'll try to unshare the screen when I write on the board. And so we're, since the university extended the semester, they basically got rid of the 2 fall breaks. I don't know if you saw the email, but they got rid of the 2. Can y'all hear me? Okay, so they got rid of the 2 fall breaks. They shortened the Thanksgiving vacation to where we're in school Monday through Wednesday. And then they extended the semester for 1 week. So that basically more than covers the 3 weeks that we've been off. So I was able to redo the syllabus, and I was able to just kind of picked up from where we left off, so to speak. But I'm gonna go over chapters 2 and 3 again because it's a little rusty for me. It seems like it's been forever since we talked about that material. So I kind of wanted to give you guys just kind of a slow start again, because I'm sure you haven't been thinking about this class for the past month. So so you can see on the syllabus, I revised the syllabus, which I'll pull up in a second. And there's nothing due until next Monday. And so chapter 2 is going to be due next Monday. And then chapter 3 will be due next Wednesday. And then, so the syllabus doesn't have the due dates, but if you go down and look at the turn-in portals, it does have the due dates. So let me share my screen here, and then we'll go ahead and, well, it's not quite time yet, but we'll get started in a few minutes. Let me share the screen and pull this up. Okay, that's not what I wanted to do here. Okay, can you guys see the screen on Zoom? Alexia, Cassie, can you guys see the screen on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so I went ahead and revised the syllabus. And so if you come down here, here's the revised syllabus with a schedule. And so you'll see that the first exam is not going to be until Monday, October 11th. And so that'll be covering the first 5 chapters. So you have plenty of time to catch up. And if you're having issues with the internet or anything, just let me know. And you can, in fact, if you are having difficulty, if you can't come to class to turn in a paper copy and you're having internet issues, you can turn in the homework. You can text me pictures of your homework to turn it in. And so anyway, the first exam is going to be on Monday, October 11th. And hopefully you'll all be back in class by then. If you can't make it, if you have some extenuating circumstances where you've left the state, then just let me know and I'll work something out with you. Okay, and then the second exam is going to be Wednesday, November 17th. And then the final, the comprehensive final is going to be Monday, December 13th from 1 to 3. So those are the new exam dates. And then don't forget about the current topics. You need to bring in 2 articles this semester. If it's on Zoom, you can just share it through Zoom if you're on Zoom. And then the drop date changed to November 30th. So those are the changes in the revised syllabus. And then okay, and then just to refresh your memory, the chapter 2 homework is the financial statements. That's due on Monday. So if you come down here, right here. So here's the turn-in portal for chapter 2. It's due Monday before class. And then the chapter 3 homework is going to be due on Wednesday before class. The chapter 4 homework will be due October 4th. And then the chapter 5 homework will be due October 6th. And here's the turn-in portals for that. And then when you're doing the chapter 3 homework, you're gonna use these tax rates. These are the tax rates and the exemptions and all the tax information. So don't forget when you're doing the case for chapter 3, just ignore what they are using and use the 2021 information. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is just go over chapter 2, and I went over it kind of fast last time, and so I wanted to spend a little bit more time on the time value of money, and we'll go over the ratios again, and we'll go over the time value of money, the problems and the formulas and so forth, because that's really important. It's an important skill to have, to be able to calculate the time value of money, whether you're using the formulas or whether you're using the financial calculator or Excel. But if you're a finance major, you definitely want to be familiar with these formulas and know how to use these formulas. All right, so I hope you all didn't fare too badly from the storm. How are you guys all doing? So pretty much everybody needs a new roof or has roof damage. I actually didn't come back to town till last night, but I'd seen pictures of my place and I was able to get a roof, a tarp thing on. So it wasn't as bad as I thought. My ceiling, my roof vent blew off. So I was really worried that I was walking into a mess, but it was okay. I just had a little bit of water damage inside, but not bad. So anyway, I know that a lot of people are dealing with a lot of stuff. So it's going to make the insurance class next semester really interesting because, with all these insurance issues. But one thing that I would recommend to you all, you may already know this, but I happened to be watching the news right after the storm, and they've had the insurance commissioner out a lot, who's really good. And I actually had forgotten this, but after Katrina, the insurance companies, remember we had, well, if some of you won't remember this, but in 2005, we had Katrina and then we had Rita right afterwards. Well, these insurance companies were trying to charge people the deductible twice. And so what they did was they changed the law in Louisiana to where I don't think it's per calendar year. I think it's per hurricane season or something, right? Wendy, that's correct? Okay. Yeah, so it's per hurricane season. So if you have wind damage from a hurricane and then there's another hurricane, they can only charge you that one deductible. So even if you don't think, if your parents or you or family members have damage from the storm, like I have damage, it's probably not going to meet my deductible. But I'm still going to go on record with my insurance company, because if there's another storm, then I'm on record with that damage. And in other words, let's say this damage is $3,000. My deductible is actually $5,700. So I'll have $3,000 towards the deductible. So make sure you go on record with that. So every time there's an event, there's always these unintended consequences, and they try to lobby to change the rules. So the big unintended consequences of this one for Orleans Parish was that, and this doesn't really make any sense to me, but Mayor Cantrell said, we don't have time to issue an evacuation order, so we're not issuing a mandatory evacuation order. Well, these insurance companies, all the policies state, if it's not a mandatory evacuation, we are not going to pay you for your hotel and your expenses. And also not having power is not a reason to not be in your house. So anyway, they're trying to, some of these insurance companies have agreed to pay for those expenses. And they're trying to change the law to make it to where it should be how bad the storm is, not just whether there's a mandatory evacuation order or not. So anyway, there'll be a lot of interesting things coming out of what happened with the storm here. So, okay, well, I hope you all come back. I hope to see all your faces on the 27th. So, okay, anyway, let's move on now. So probably none of you probably have a current event, right? Okay, so go ahead, just if you want to get that out of the way, if you're coming back face to face, maybe on Wednesday or Monday, or just start thinking about, getting back in the swing of things and bring a current event. There's anything to do with the hurricane insurance stuff, financial planning is good. Also, like what to take with you. You should probably have digital copies of all of your estate planning and all this stuff, because you know what it's like when, we haven't had a major storm in a long time and people forget, but it's not fun when you've evacuated and then you don't have any of these documents with you. Like I evacuated and we had to leave so suddenly. I actually didn't have any of my insurance information on my place here, but I was able to get in contact with State Farm, and they had my number and all, thankfully. So anyway, and then the next big issue that I see, which I kind of saw this coming, was the deductibles have gone up so much since Katrina. So pretty much we're all facing deductibles that we can't afford. A lot of very few people probably had a slush fund, if you will, or enough of this, enough money in savings to cover a deductible. I was talking to one friend of mine. She has an $11,000 deductible on her home. She needs a new roof. Well, obviously she's going out of pocket for that. So, so it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that, because of course it's in the mortgage company's best interests and the insurance company's best interest for you to fix your house. But what do you do if you don't have the money to pay the deductible? So anyway, we'll see how that goes. And then once again, this really, I would say the lesson that I took away from Katrina was you can't depend on the government. You have to, you have to just pull up your bootstraps and do everything on your own. Don't depend on the government. So anyway, long story short, about a week after the storm or so, a few days after the storm, I realized I better try to get some kind of blue tarp on my roof. And my neighbor said, well, you can use this blue roof program that the Army Corps of Engineers has, blah, blah, blah. So I sign up for it. Then I find out I'm one of 36,000 people with this blue roof program. So obviously didn't wait for that. I got a roofer to come out and put a tarp on, but it just goes to show, they have these, the government moves so slowly that you can't really rely on them. Anyway, so how does anyone have any questions or want to share anything about their storm experience before we get started? No? No?
Remember
Huh?
dealing with the insurance and the repairs, so just give flashbacks to your insurance class. Just how, because I remember a big part of it was talking about how everything changed.
Yeah.
So definitely everything's going to change.
Oh yeah, definitely. It definitely will. And then then you have the whole hassle too with the mortgage companies. The mortgage companies they're going to be named on these insurance checks that we get. So you can't just go cash the check and make the repairs. You got to send it off to the mortgage company, and then they divvy out a portion of the money to you, and then they want proof that the work has been done. It's a big hassle. big hassle for people. So, anybody else? Brent, how you doing?
Yeah, what do you think's gonna happen with these people that they get evicted out of their apartments?
You mean because of COVID?
No, because of damage, uninhabitable, structures.
Oh.
Matter of fact, there's a guy that, right over the street, overpass, if you go down a little further, this guy sells shrimp at one of these little side places on the bridge. He has a place that he built,
Yeah.
and I just so happened to stop by and see him just to see how he made out.
Uh-huh.
And him and his wife got kicked out of their apartment with their 2 children.
Oh, man.
And it just so happened that one of his customers that comes there and buys from him, that he come up for years to buy from him, had a rental house right there at Subdivision,
Mm-hmm.
and he rented it. So, I mean, even the authorities that went there and told him to turn off his generator, they have to go out. And leave 2 kids inside.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear Brent, but he brought up the issue of what's going to happen with these people who are being evicted from their apartments because of damage. It's uninhabitable. That's a real problem. I actually expected to see Nichols, the gym, set up as a shelter, because after Katrina, we had Nichols open for a whole semester for evacuees, but I think it's because there's damage to the gym. A friend of mine works is a staff member here at Nichols, and all of the air conditioners blew off on the cafeteria. They had 2 inches of water in the cafeteria. Then it rained again, and they got more water. It's a mess in there. They've had to rip out walls. All the booths are ripped out. So anyway, there's a lot of damage, but obviously there's not enough housing, and I mean, this more than ever comes down to really have to have savings for an emergency, because there's a lot of people who can't afford to move. But what I would say, if you have the money, you need to move to like the Mississippi for a while or something. There's no rentals here, really. Yeah, well, Nichols has childcare now.
I think it's for staff.
Oh, it's just staff, yeah. It's a problem. So one of my students lives in Montague, and she's in Mississippi with her 3 kids, and said that they have no idea when they're going back to school. So it is a problem.
They went to Breckenridge in Colorado. And they just stayed in Britain,
Mm-hmm.
so they figure out anything.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, yeah, anyway, it's going to be a financial hardship. Hopefully FEMA will come through quickly for people.
You know where it got hit pretty bad, and never even mentioned it, is Kramer. Are you familiar with that?
I've heard of Kramer, but where is it?
When you go through Jack Bay kind of branches off, go to the left, go to the back, go straight to Kramer.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I had a guy I used to work with at the plant. I worked with his dad, and like that right after the storm, somebody was doing probably about 3 days later. John saw his dad, and he was on hurricane duty at the plant. He got back home, his son Trent and his son Reed from home to Ghana. And when he did, so, but it was a 9-foot level. They had about a 13-foot surge. And so he got the family with mom and three house. For about 6 hours to try to save whatever they could. And he said that they couldn't even get the boat off the trailer fast enough to sunk the boat. So I know they back there with sludge and everything.
Yeah.
You'll never hear nothing on the news about them, or nobody going back there. So I don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think,
haven't even had a chance to ride back there.
yeah. Well, didn't the eye go right over Jack Bay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It pretty much followed right up the beach,
Mm-hmm.
went up and then kind of like Lopez Raceland.
Yeah.
Kramer got 2 lakes right there. He got Lake Buck and he got.
Yeah. Yeah, the news is very prejudicial in how they cover things. It's nothing like the coverage during Katrina. Yeah, exactly. You know,
I actually saw an article where it was like,
yeah. So, yeah. So I know, so you know how everything in life is luck and timing? So let me share this crazy story with you. I don't know if I've told you or not, but we have a place in Waveland. And we're probably going to sell it because now my husband is like freaking out. It's like, you know, it's like you knew what you were getting into when you bought the place. It is 12 feet up. Now don't complain about worrying about storms. But anyway, it's gone up in value, so we'll probably sell it just because we don't want the headache. But that's not my story. One of my neighbors, we evacuated to Natchez, and then we ended up going to Waveland for the week, starting on Monday because we had power there. So one of my neighbors drives by with his golf cart and tells me that just last week, 2 weeks ago, a week before the storm, they closed on a camp in Montague. And so needless to say, that camp is toast. But this I thought was really interesting because I used to, you know, my husband and I would drive down there on weekend excursions, and we would go to Dulac. And the last time I saw Dulac, it was, you know, it's very vulnerable, as you know. And so my neighbor was telling me that Dulac, contrary to what you would think, that people would just be leaving Dulac, there's all these really high-end camps down there. So as it's gotten riskier to live down there, it's basically wealthy people have gone down there now. I think that's really interesting. Really, so I found that interesting. Anyway, so that, you know, my neighbor who closed on this property in Montague 2 weeks before the storm, it's a total loss, and they're going to rebuild, but they're underinsured. So, but they'll rebuild it, you know, however they want to. But they were actually saying they felt fortunate that it was a total loss versus just damage, because then you can rebuild it and you don't have to worry about issues. So there's a silver lining there. So, okay, have anybody on anyone on Zoom? Do you want to share your drama or your story? How are you guys doing, on those of you who are on Zoom? Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and I'm going to get started talking about chapter 2 then, kind of a review of chapter 2, and then just interrupt me if you have any questions. Let me share my screen. And I mean, I am sharing the screen, but let me pull up the, try to pull up the PowerPoints here. Okay, so as you recall, chapter 2 is on financial statements. Okay. So this is kind of interesting. I just wanted to review a few things here. So make sure you understand this 50-30-20 rule is basically the maximum amount to spend on each category. So ideally, only 50% of your income should go towards fixed expenses, your living expenses. I mean, these aren't all fixed. Obviously, the rent is fixed, but these are things that can change over, can vary slightly, but they're necessities. 30% should be flexible, things that wants but not necessarily needs, and then 20% should go to savings and investing and emergency funds and so forth. So most people do not do this. If you think about it, most people pay much more than 50% towards their living expenses and much less towards their financial needs, or much less towards these financial goals, savings and so forth. But think about what's happened to us over the past 2 years and the financial hardships that people have faced. First COVID, and then we had some storms last last year, but we didn't have to evacuate, but now the storm, you just never know what can happen. And so like I don't know if I've told you this in this class, but my daughter's a small business owner. And so I kept telling her, I said, you need to have enough money to cash flow. You need to have enough cushion to be able to pay your employees if something happens. Because if there's a hurricane, you could go to, 1 to 3 months without any customers. And so, of course, it happened. And so it's not going to be 1 or 2 months, but it just goes to show whether you're a business owner or whether just for your personal needs, it really makes sense to have a good cushion. And it doesn't have to all be, it's nice to have, ideally, I think you should have 3 months saved up in an emergency fund, just in a checking account or savings account. But then after that, if you have an emergency, you can always sell some stocks. You can tap into your investment account if need be. All right. So if you recall, the balance sheet tells you where you are right currently. So it's all of your assets. Okay. And then you subtract out all your liabilities, and your assets, everything you own minus what you owe equals your net worth. And so they mention here that, and so here's some examples of your liquid assets and your real property. Here's your liabilities, and then the difference is your net worth. And the balance sheet is basically a snapshot in time. So this, I wanted to talk about this. So if you're solvent, if your net worth is positive, here they're saying that you're insolvent if your net worth is negative. Well, that really has a negative connotation, right? If you're to think you're insolvent. It's really not that uncommon for people in their 20s to be insolvent. Because if you think about it, if you have a car loan and you have a mortgage and you have some student loans, you could easily be insolvent. So let's say you put only, most people put 20% down on their houses, but maybe you only put 10% down on your house. And the value could have gone down a little, or, but regardless, let's say you put 10% down on your house, you've got some student loans, you could have a negative net worth, which is, it's not that big of a problem if you're young and starting out, is my point. All right. And so remember, this chart was just showing what people's net worth is, median net worth by age group. And so, of course, younger than 35, it's quite low, 11,000. The median, meaning 50% have more, 50% have less. And then, of course, it goes up as you get older. Even people who are retired and living on their savings, it just continues to get higher. So why is this? Because it takes money to make money. And so these people have had their whole lives to save. They've got houses that are appreciating in value. They've got stock accounts and so forth, stocks and bonds. And today we're seeing a downturn in the market. We might be having a little correction, but in the long run, the market just goes higher. And so the power of compounding pays off for those people. Okay, then I also wanted to go over these ratios. Well, let me go over the income statement again. So remember, the income statement is basically just tells you what's been going on over that period of time, a calendar year. And so you just record all of your income, subtract out your expenses, and then that's your net income. So that's real simple. And if you recall this graph, this is our biggest expense. Households, their biggest expenses on housing, followed by transportation and food. And then make sure you keep records of your financial statements. It doesn't all have to be printed. Of course, it can be online. Okay, so here, I wanted to go over these ratios again and just to refresh your memory and go over the meaning of these ratios. So the solvency ratio, that is net worth divided by total assets. So the solvency ratio, net worth divided by total assets. So you just go to the balance sheet and look at your bottom line, look at your net worth, and you divide that by total assets. So if you go back in the notes from before the storm, this example that I used, these people had a net worth of 32%. And so that means think of this, if you would want to write in parentheses after solvency ratio, just put cushion against insolvency. So if you have a solvency ratio of 32%, that means that your assets can decline. You can withstand a 32% decline in your assets before you're insolvent. Okay, so if your solvency ratio is 50%, that means that your assets, your house and your investment accounts could decline by 50% before you're insolvent. So obviously the higher that solvency ratio, the better. Okay, and then the next one, the liquidity ratio, looks at the liquid assets divided by your total current debt. So that's based in parentheses, just put current ratio. If you remember the current ratio, current assets divided by current liabilities, that's the same thing. So just to repeat that, your liquidity ratio, your liquid assets, so that would be your cash, any money assets you have, cash, savings accounts, checking account, investment accounts, those are your liquid assets. Real estate would not be a liquid asset. So anything that deals with money, any money asset is going to be a liquid asset. So it's cash and savings accounts, money market accounts, and so forth. So they're not including in this, even though investment accounts are not real property, it's money. They're not considering investment accounts or retirement accounts here because you wouldn't typically use those accounts to pay your bills. So this is your liquid assets divided by your total current debt. So in this particular case, it was the answer that we got. It was 830 divided by 1300. And in this example that we used in class, it was a 67% liquidity ratio. So that means they have enough current assets to cover 67% of their debt obligations. So that means that they have enough savings to last 67% of the year, which is 8 months. So the best situation would be if your liquidity ratio were 1, you have enough liquid assets, you have enough savings to cover your bills for a whole year. If it were 0.5, I guess I would say that personally, that would be my goal, to have a liquidity ratio of 0.5, 50%. So what does that mean? If my liquidity ratio is 50%, you've got 6 months in savings. Okay, if it's 25%, you've got 3 months in savings. So, and most of these financial planners say you should have 3 to 6 months of savings. And so you can see, again, not to beat a dead horse, but when you just never know what could happen. Who would have ever thought we've been going through this COVID issue, and then with this hurricane, you just never know what can happen to where you need money, and it makes life a lot easier when you have the cash on hand. It means the difference for a lot of people of whether you can evacuate or not, how long you can stay. So it's an evacuation situation.
So if your liquidity ratio moves from 1 to 3, it's good because you now have coverage for 3 years?
Yeah, that's correct. So
Okay.
yeah, this question at the bottom, a liquidity ratio of 1 is 100%. So that's, you can cover 100% of your bills for the year. 3 would be 300%. So that's good. So the higher, the better with the liquidity ratio. But it's kind of like if you've taken Finance 302 with me, when we talk about the current ratio. And I said to you, well, you know, remember the current ratio, current assets divided by current liabilities. And I would ask the question in class, the higher the better, but there can be extremes. So like companies typically will have a current ratio of 3 times, meaning they have 3 times the current assets to cover their liabilities. But what if it's 10 times? So let me ask you this question from a personal financial planning standpoint. These are the assets that they're looking at in the numerator: cash, savings accounts, money market accounts. Those are accounts that a money market account is like a savings account, but they're investing in short-term bonds. And so there's not a lot of risk there, but you make a little bit more interest. And then CDs, guaranteed certificates of deposit, they make a little bit of interest. So what if you had a client and they had a liquidity ratio of 5? In other words, they have enough money to pay their bills for 5 years. Could you, what would you advise them? Huh? Right, they should be investing that money, because you basically are losing money. Wendy's right. If you having money in this in a checking account, a savings account, money markets, and CD, you're not keeping up with inflation. So you really are kind of losing money. So, you know, I think I would say 0.5 is a good ratio, honestly. And if you're over 1, you've got too much, and you should be putting some of this money in long-term investments in stocks. Just start buying on dips and put some of it in stocks and bonds that are going to give you a better rate of return. So that's my point. The higher the better, but if it's too high, then you have too much in these liquid assets. But you have to look at the big picture, because some people don't like the risk of putting things in the market, putting their money in the market. So if they can't sleep at night and they just want to keep everything in CDs, fine. You can't argue with people, because they're going to be, it's not worth the stress of having that. You know, if you have somebody who's in their 70s or 80s and they don't want to take that risk, I wouldn't argue with them, because we could have a downturn that they couldn't recover from. So for some people, it makes sense to have a lot of money in these. For others, it doesn't. For most of us, it doesn't. Okay, then we have the savings ratio. Basically, that's just telling us what's our savings rate? What percentage of our income are we saving? So the savings ratio is the cash surplus divided by net income. And so if you go back and look in the book, it shows you in the example your cash surplus, how much cash you have left over after all this. And so that the cash surplus divided by the net income is your savings ratio. So they have, so they're asking here, 15 to 20%, is that good or bad? That's good, because the Americans, this is basically just saying what percentage are you saving. The average in America is 5 to 8%. At times it's been as low as 2%. At times it's been as low as like negative. I've seen it as low as like 1%. And I was telling you this in class, but let me reiterate. It's gone really low when people are really positive about the economy, and they're making a lot of money in their home. They're building equity in their house rather, or in their properties. When the stock market is doing really well, there's this wealth effect. And so if you think about it logically, people are thinking, well, my house is the value of my house is increasing 20% a year. My 401k is increasing 20% a year. My investment account is increasing about 20% a year. Why should I bother to try to scrimp and save 15% of my take-home pay? Let's go to Disney World. See what I'm saying? Or let's go on vacation. So when things are really good in the economy, people tend to save less because of this wealth effect. But then when we hit hard times, when there's a recession, well, maybe and the market goes soft and prices go down and the housing market and the stock market goes down, people get worried and they start to save more. So it's kind of the opposite of what you would think logically. You think people would save more during really good times, but they don't. They tend to save less because they have all this extra wealth. But when we have a recession and when we have these panics or these things that happen, like the 2007 to 2009 recession, the savings rate really increased. That's why they're saying in the book that the average is 5 to 8% now, because coming out of that recession that really affected a lot of people's psyches. And I think you'll probably see people in our region after this hurricane saving more, because it's been a wake-up call for a lot of us, me included. I don't have $5,000 lying around, $5,700 lying around to pay my deductible. And so what I should have done, and I remembered why I raised the deductible so high, because it lowered my annual premium. And so I'm thinking, what's the chances of, a storm coming, blah, blah, blah. I'll just, I'm saving theoretically $800 a year by having this higher deductible. Well, I've saved much more. I'm better off because I've saved much more over the years than this deductible would cost me. But now, like a lot of people, we're facing actually paying the deductible that I didn't really plan for. So I think that's going to make a lot of people say, okay, we should have a separate savings account for deductibles. And I'm sure some people are doing that, have done that already, but most of us have not. So anyway, cash surplus is how much you're saving. Financial planners recommend 10 to 15%. The average, like I said, is 5 to 8%. Okay, and then debt service ratio. Okay, so this is how much money is going out on loan payments. So this is where people can really get in trouble when they live beyond their means and they run up credit card debt. You've got a house mortgage, you've got maybe student loans, you've got car payment, and then credit cards. So people can get in trouble with these credit card debts because their debt service ratio goes up so high, and then they don't have any cushion anymore, and they're paying so much of their fixed income of their monthly income on debt service. So it really limits their current consumption. So anyway, if your debt service moves from 15% to 30%, is that good or bad? That's bad. That means that 30% of your income is going to pay debt. So the debt service ratio is simply your monthly loan payments divided by your gross monthly income. And so if you ever apply for a loan, like if you call a credit union or a bank or you go to a car dealership and you're applying for, say, a car loan, they'll ask you, what's your gross monthly income? And then they're going to ask you, what's your rent? What are you paying for rent or your mortgage payment and so forth. And so they're actually figuring this out. They're figuring out what your debt service ratio is. So for a house, they really don't want that to be more than like a third. For a car loan, I've talked to car salesmen before, and they'll let people go up as high as like 50% on the debt service. But think about that. A 50% debt service ratio is not very good. That's pretty bad if you've got 50% of your income going out to pay loans. So definitely with this, the lower the better. Try to have this as low as possible. When you're retired, it'd be nice if you can have this at 0. So debt service ratio, monthly loan payments divided by gross monthly income. All right. Okay, so we went over the budget. We talked about the budgets. I'm going to skip that. Okay, I wanted to spend some more time on the time value of money. And so I'm going to stop sharing and see if you guys can see the board. Hang on a second. Okay. All right, so I'm going to write some formulas on the board and just talk about some basic time value of money problems. And so basically with the time value of money, because of opportunity cost, because of inflation, if we're going to save money, if we're going to be induced to, we have a choice of either consuming now or consuming later, right? And so we can take our money and we can buy something now, or we can save it for future consumption. So what do we want? How do we want to be compensated for that? I mean, in other words, what's the opportunity cost of saving? If I have a choice of either going to Best Buy and buying a 55-inch TV when I leave class today, or putting the money in the bank or in an investment, what am I giving up if I save? What's my opportunity cost of saving?
Losing.
Yeah, the current, not losing necessarily, but the current consumption. And so if you're going to be induced to save money, to invest, you want to make a return. So that's the whole point of this time value of money. And it's that, you know, $1 today is really worth more than $1 tomorrow. So if inflation is 3% and I put $100 in the bank in my checking account, which makes no interest, or my savings account, if I put $100 in my savings account on January 1st and inflation is 3%, at the end of the year, it's only worth $97. So if you're going to save, then you want to make money on that, because you're giving up current consumption. So you might ask yourself, well, then why do people bother saving? Why not just put it in the market? Because obviously, if we're saving, we're putting money in CDs, in savings accounts, we're not going to make 3%, and inflation is about 3%. Well, the reason people do is because there's the risk associated, of course, with putting it in the market, and there's the risk of losing money. So they'd rather have the money safe and maybe only lose 3% spending power than putting it in the market and losing a lot more. So it's good to have a balance in life. Have some in savings, but then have some in investment. Have some in property, real estate, maybe. So, but the key in life is diversification. So let me get back to the hurricane. That neighbor I was telling you about in Montague, he also told me that his brother has 24 rental properties in that general area. So I was thinking that's really stupid too. Why would you have, I personally, I would not want to manage 24 rental properties. I have one rental property, that's enough. But I was thinking about I have a couple former students who have several rental properties. This is a nightmare dealing with these insurance companies times however many rental properties you have. So the point I'm making here is the key is diversification. Don't have all your eggs in one basket. And if you do really like real estate and down the road you want to invest in real estate, don't do it all in one area. I mean, I know people who have a bunch of rental properties in Florida. That's not smart either, because you can get hit with a hurricane. And I know people who have gone into bankruptcy because of issues with not being diversified in real estate. And down in Florida, for example, I'm talking about the Destin Fort Walton area. People think, oh, that's such a great deal. I'm going to buy this condo. I'm going to get some equity in one condo, then I'm going to borrow money and buy another condo. And it's a house of cards. And so I can tell you what happened since I've been looking at that market or been familiar with it. In 2003, Ivan came. And then in 2006, there was another storm. And then and every time there's a storm down there, there's no rentals, no rental income coming in. If it's in the winter, it's in the summertime. Then we had the BP oil spill, and no one was coming down there because of the BP oil spill. So these people basically at one point went almost 3 seasons without any rental income. And there were a lot of bankruptcies because, yeah, real estate is a great investment, but it does have its ups and downs. And again, you want to be diversified. So the point is, with the time value of money, getting back to this, you want to invest and make money that will keep up with inflation or beat inflation. But again, you want to be diversified. You don't want to get greedy and put all your eggs in one basket. That's not, you can be tempted to do that, but not a good idea. Okay, did you have any questions or comments on Zoom so far? Okay, so let's first look at the future value. So your basic formula for the future value is, can you guys see that on the board? Right. Your future value is the present value times 1 plus the interest rate. So for example, if you wanted to have $100, if you invest $100 at 5% over 3 years, what is it worth in 3 years? $115.75. You take it's one interest rate to the number of years times $100. So it's your present value times 1 plus the interest rate to the nth power, and you get $115.75. So that's your formula. Can you guys see that? So that's the formula for the present value, or excuse me, for the future value. I'm going to try to move this over. For the future value of a lump sum. Okay, then the other formula that we have for the time value of money is present value. So this is basically asking, well, let me ask you all, what is if it's the present value of a lump sum, what question is that asking? The future value is simple. If I invest X amount of dollars, what do I have at the end? But what is the present value asking? In plain English, what are we trying to find with the present value? Huh? What it's worth today, or how much would I have to invest? But that's an interesting point that Wendy brought up. So we've been talking about inflation. Let's talk about what's it worth today. So what if you had, let's do the $1 million thing. What is $1 million worth in today's dollars if we have 3% inflation, right? So let's just go out 20 years. What is well, let's go out longer than that. Let's go out 40 years. What is $1 million 40 years from now really worth in today's dollars? So in other words, if we take $1 million and we divide that by 1.03 to the 40th power, that tells us what $1 million is worth in today's dollars. So let's see what that is. So if you take 1.03 and you hit the Y to the X button and hit 40, that'll give you that number. So this is going to be $1 million times or divided by 3.26 is 306,748. Okay. So if you started saving and your goal was to have $1 million by the time, let's say you're going to retire in 40 years, and so your goal is to have $1 million in 40 years, that $1 million is like having that $1 million in 40 years is the same as having $307,000 today. So that's really not a lot of money if you were thinking, if I retired today and I had only $306,000 to my name, that's definitely not enough to live on. If I retired today and had $1 million, I'd be pretty comfortable. But so this kind of goes to show that you should, you really need to save as much as you can. Being a millionaire when you retire is not going to be enough, is my point. Now, another way to look at this is if I wanted to have if I was going to invest my money and I want to have $1 million in 40 years and I can only earn 3%, how much do I have to invest today? And that's the 306,000. Okay, so let me reword this a little bit. Instead of looking at that, let's just say, if I wanted to have $1 million in 40 years, but I thought I could earn 8%. Let's say I want to put in a lump sum of savings in the market. And I want to know, how much do I have to put in today at 8% in order to have $1 million in 40 years? And that will give me the number. So if I take the $1 million and I divide that by 1.08 to the 40th power, that will tell me how much I have to put up today in order to have $1 million in 40 years if I can earn 8%. So let's do that. So that's going to be $1 million divided by 21.72. That's 46,040. So if I came into some money and if I came into $46,000 and I invested it at 8%, I'd have $1 million in 40 years. Okay, so let's look at one other lump sum situation, and I think 8% is really reasonable. 8.5%, 9%, 10% is more. So let's do another one. Let's say that somebody got some COVID money and they were able to, and they didn't spend it at all. There's people out there who have used this COVID money to start businesses, to start investment accounts. So let's say somebody, all told, got $7,000 in COVID money, which that was not unreasonable. A lot of people got at least that. So let's say that you got $7,000 in COVID money, and you are, well, this is actually going to be the present value, a future value. I'm going to change this to a future value. So I'm going to write this number line here. So if you receive $7,000, a lump sum of $7,000 from the government in COVID money, and you invested that and you could make 10%, what would that be worth in 40 years? How much of a nest egg would that be? And so let's calculate that future value. So it's $7,000 times 1.10 to the 40th power. That's $316,814, right? 15. So, there's some people out there who weren't suffering a hardship and just banked this COVID money. A lot of these people who were on all these people who were on Robinhood, they were investing COVID money. So if they don't lose it all, they could have quite a nest egg. But if you just invested the COVID money in a diversified portfolio and it averaged 10% a year, you could put it in an IRA. You've got $317,000 in 40 years. So that's another example of a lump sum, future value of a lump sum. Um, Okay, any questions? Okay, so let's look at, so the way to do this, let me just tell you real quick how to do this to refresh your memory in a, using a calculator. So you would put in, the 7,000 is your present value. So you would put in 7,000 PV. Put that in as a negative sign, plus hit the plus minus sign because that's an outflow. 10 is going to be N. 40, I'm sorry, 10 is the I dash Y. 40 is the N. Payment is 0. And then you hit compute and the future value on your calculator, and that will give you the number. And then you just hit the same thing for present value. You're just computing present value. Okay, so let's talk real quick about annuities. I wanted to write down the formula for annuities for you. So let me ask you, what is an annuity? So anyone on Zoom or in the class, feel free to answer. What is it? If somebody asks you what is an annuity, how would you explain it? Cardo? It's the same, yeah, it's the same amount of money, either annually or monthly. So an annuity is just simply an equal payment, either made or received. So let's if you think about this, a lot of insurance companies sell annuities. And so let's say you took the $7,000 COVID money and you said, you called an insurance company. They would be more than happy to take your money, believe me. And you said, hey, I want to buy an annuity and I want to have this when I retire. Okay. So you pay the $7,000 to that insurance company. They're going to invest the money. And so they've run these numbers just like we did. So remember that $7,000 was $316,815. Okay. So they're going to be a little more conservative. They're going to run the numbers probably like they can make 8% on it, but they're only going to calculate about 3 or 4% for you. And so then they're going to figure out what they can annuitize. So what they would say is, okay, give us $7,000 in 40 years. We'll pay you $2,000 a month for the next 30 years. So that's what an annuity is. You can pay a lump sum and then in some future time get these annual payments or these monthly payments. Or you can, with these insurance companies, you can pay monthly. You can pay a monthly premium and then you have this annuity. But you don't, I probably mentioned this before in class, there's no reason to hire an insurance to buy an annuity from an insurance company. You can do it yourself. So if you opened an account with Schwab or Robinhood, Fidelity, whatever, and you put in that $7,000 and equal the 316, you can annuitize it yourself. You can just figure out, okay, how much can I withdraw now and have equal payments and have it go down to 0 by the time I'm 80 years old or 90 years old. So an annuity is simply equal payments being received or being made. If you're receiving payments, then that's one type. If you, another way to think of an annuity is you want to save, you're going to save $1,200 a month in an IRA or in your retirement account. So you just, an IRA has a limit of 6,000. So let's say you're going to save $100 a month, $1,200 a year. So if you save $1,200 a year for the next 40 years, that's an annuity too, because you're saving an equal amount. If you're talking about making or receiving equal payments, it's called an annuity. If you're making or receiving unequal payments, if the payments differ, then that's considered a cash flow problem. All right, so let me show you the formula for an annuity again. So you can use the formula to calculate these annuities, or you can also use your calculator. So the present value of the future value of an annuity is the payment times 1 plus the interest rate to the nth power divided by the interest rate minus 1 over the interest rate. Okay, so that's going to be that. So the future value of an annuity is the payment times 1 plus the interest rate to the nth power divided by the interest rate minus 1 over the interest rate. And there's two types of annuities. There's an annuity, a regular annuity, and then there's an annuity due. An annuity due is where the payments are made or received at the beginning of the year. So think about this. If you are saving money, if you're saving $100 a month, and you save it at the beginning of the month versus the end of the month, it gives you 1 extra compounding period. So an annuity due is going to give you more money if you're calculating the future value. If it's the present value of an annuity, then, or if you're withdrawing and it's an annuity due, you're withdrawing at the beginning of the period. So you'd have to put up more money if you're calculating the present value. So anyway, so this is the future value of an annuity. If it's an annuity due, all you do is change, you're gonna add 1 plus the interest rate. You're gonna multiply that whole formula by 1 plus the interest rate. And that gives you that extra 1 period of compounding. Now, the present value of an annuity is the payment times 1 over the interest rate minus 1 over the interest rate times 1 plus I to the nth power. So that tells us how much money we would have to put up in order to receive an annuity. And then the present value of an annuity due is going to be the same formula times 1 plus the interest rate.
Are these formulas in your, PowerPoint?
No,
They're not.
they're not.
Okay.
They have them in the textbook. They might be a little different, but these are the ones that I use. So let's go back to the COVID example, and I'll show you with the calculator how to do this too. So we had this future value of $7,000 at 10% equaled the 317. Let me see what that was. It was 316. Okay, going back to this problem, we figured out with our COVID money, we got a 7,000 check from the government, and we just banked that. We put that in Robinhood, and we've got a diversified portfolio, and we're figuring we can make 10% over 40 years. So at the end of 40 years, we'll have $316,815 just from this lanyard money fell into our laps. So what does that mean for us? So how much can I withdraw? Now I'm going to annuitize it. I'm going to turn this into an annuity. So my question to you is, let me keep it in that account, earning 10%. So I'm 60, I'm gonna say I'm gonna die when I'm 90. So I'm gonna annuitize that for 30 years at 10%. How much can I withdraw per year? And over from the time I'm 60 till I'm 90. So my question is, what is so this money is this 316,000 that actually becomes my present value, 316,815, and 10%, and it's 30 years from age 60 to age 90. And my question is, what's my payment going to be? So with these annuities, you can solve for the payment, you can solve for, and the interest rate and so forth. So it's easier just to use the financial calculator to do this. So just to repeat the question here, the $7,000 of COVID money that fell in my lap, I just stuck it in an investment account. At the end of 40 years, it's worth $316,000. Now, I want to know how I want to use that as a little retirement fund. So I'm annuitizing that over 30 years at 10%. How much can I withdraw per year? What's the annuity? So I'm solving for the payment there. So the way to calculate this, you put in the 316,815. About your present value. 0 is the future value, because we want it to be, we want to withdraw, we want it to be depleted after those 30 years. So we're going to put in 0 future value. It's 30 years. 30 is N. Okay. 10 is the interest rate. And then we're going to hit compute and payment. And we get 33,607. That's pretty good little retirement there. Now, of course, we're not taking into account inflation, but this is just something extra that fell from the sky. So the payment, the answer to that is 33,607. Let's divide that by 12. That is $2,800 a month over something that just fell from the sky that I was disciplined enough not to spend. So, so you can see that's pretty good little nest egg there that you didn't really have to do anything for. All right, so one other thing. Now, a lot of people, what if we decided this? What if I said that I don't want to deplete the principal at all? What if I said, wouldn't it be cool if the $7,000 that fell into my lap just kept going in perpetuity for my kids and my grandkids? So my question now is, how much money can I withdraw and never touch the principal? In other words, I want this to stay at 316,815. I don't want this to be 0. So my question to you now is, how much can I withdraw and not ever touch the principal? Okay. Well, that's really easy. Actually, you just take the 316,815 and multiply it by 10%. That's the interest that you're earning, or that's the returns. So you just skim off your earnings and you never touch this. So if you take the 316,815 times 10%, that's 31,000.
That's so they can pay.
Divide that by 12.
Okay, do I write it like in the thing so it keeps the indentation thing?
No, you print it
26,
in big letters, VOID, over the payable to everything. That way they can't write on it.
So this is what I wanted to show you. This is what's so interesting, is that for just $640, for just $160 less a month, you've preserved the principal. And that again shows you the power of compounding. Okay, so on the, not so much on the homework, but on the exams, you might have a few of these time value of money questions. There's some in the homework. Just make sure you're familiar with it. You can use the calculator if you want. You don't have to use the formulas. I just wanted you to be familiar with the formulas. But just understand how to calculate the present and the future value of a lump sum, present and future value of an annuity. So to calculate an annuity due, what you have to do in your calculator is you change your calculator to beginning mode. And the way you do that is you hit second, and up right above the payment is begin, second and begin, and then you hit second and set, and that changes it to beginning mode. You do the calculation, and then when you're finished, hit second and begin, second and set, and it changes it back. Okay, did you have any questions, comments? Okay, well, welcome back to the class. I feel like we're starting the semester over, kind of almost are. So just this homework is not going to be due till Monday to give you a chance to get back in the swing of things. So on Wednesday, we're going to talk about taxes and how we've been talking about investments a lot. So we're going to talk about how investments are taxed and what are some good investing strategies regarding taxes. And so we'll be going over chapter 3 on Wednesday. So that's all you have to do is read chapter 3. And then if you want to bring in an article or discuss an article, get it out of the way, one of them out of the way, that's fine too. Okay, have a good rest of the day, everybody. Did you guys on Zoom have any questions? Okay, I'm going to sign off then, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday.